woman is in one of the most important jobs in our country, and we don't actually know who the heck she is or where the heck she's actually come from. And I think we kind of need to know. And if you've got nothing to hide, why are you not answering this head on? Why are you not, telling us exactly who you are?
Breaking right now, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, has been exposed as a treacherous liar who faked her CV as much as she faked Labour's pre-election pledges on farmers and winter fuel allowance. An extraordinary news story from the Guido Fawkes website, which has shamed the Labour stooges in the MSM on this story. So let me take you through it. They have reported in the last few hours that Guido can now exclusively reveal that Reeves claims she was an economist on legal filings made during her time at HBOS. Reeves became a director of a Leeds-based charity on the 15th of May 2008 in the middle of her time in an HBOS retail banking complaints team. Her friend says he remembers her working in operations in Leeds at the time. On her appointment form, which is publicly available, a formal submission to a government body, she states her current occupation to be economist. She appears to have filled in the form in her own handwriting. It also bears her signature in ink. And let me show you the receipts. There they are. Reeves, by her own account, was not working as an economist at the time, as clarified by the edits to her LinkedIn page that we covered earlier in the week. Treasury sources added on Friday that Reeves worked in retail banking, covering various areas, drawing on her background as an economist. Hacks were referred to this line by Downing Street yesterday. So, not an economist. This document was officially submitted to Companies House. As Chancellor, this revelation leaves Reeves in an extremely difficult position. So that's according to Guido Fawkes, who is leading the charge on this when the mainstream media are trying to ignore this story. I think, though, what they said is the understatement of the year. Reeves must go. This is a woman who promised integrity in public life. She fell at the first hurdle. As Reform UK Deputy Leader Richard Tice has said, the Chancellor appears deliberately to have misled the British people about her career and experience. Where is her honesty and integrity? And it gets worse for Rachel Reeves at this hour. Michael Crick, this guy is a hard left journalist. Michael Crick now has just called on Rachel Reeves to go. It's a bombshell. Watch this.
That she should resign or be sacked unless she comes up with a decent explanation for all of this. Or I might have added a proper apology, because it's getting a bit of a habit for Rachel Reeves. And in terms of her CV, as you say, her LinkedIn posting last week changed from being an economist at HBOS to being in retail banking at HBOS.
Different, very, very different.
Yeah, and that involved, apparently, according to Guido, dealing with customer complaints and a bit of IT. And then she told Stylist magazine that in 2021, she worked at the Bank of England for the best part of a decade. Well, it turns out that was 6 years, not the best part of a decade. And one of those years, she was doing a master's in economics masters at the LSE. So it was only 5 years, really. And then, remember, a year or two ago, she was found to have, frankly, plagiarised parts of her book on women in politics. Substantial chunks, paragraphs, were lifted from either Wikipedia or from articles in The Guardian and elsewhere. Now, any one of these things on their own would, you'd say, well, it's a mistake, it's an error, she went a bit far. But the fact she'd gone 3 of them in a row here, really, I think, is going a bit far. And I think this is important.
Let me just be very clear on this. If Rachel Reeves were a Conservative Chancellor, she would be gone by now. Because this story would have been leading the British bashing corporation, Woke ITV, Sly News, and all of the rest for days. The fact that no one has even asked the Prime Minister about this shames our mainstream media. But the pressure is growing. Let me take you through this exchange with Sharon Davies. So someone called Woke Waster wrote to her, with the Chancellor being caught lying on her CV while farmers prepare for a national strike and Starmer being at the centre of a massive scandal over the Southport massacre, it feels like the walls are closing in on this shambolic government. Sharon Davies replied, saying, "You have to wonder how many times MSM are prepared to cover up Labour scandals and how bad it has to be. Can you imagine how much the BBC, ITV, Sky, Channel 4 would be reporting it if it was the previous government? I hate how little faith I have in our mainstream media now. Sad times." To be honest, I knew this is what the mainstream media would do. I knew that when they were getting so hysterical, driving Boris Johnson out of office, that it was all party political. I mean, has anyone seen Paul Brand on this story? I don't think so. Because they only go after politicians who they want to boot out of a job. And when it is one of their heroes on the left, they don't give a damn. But finally, the Conservative Party are taking this story seriously. The Shadow Paymaster General, Richard Wheldon, has now written to Rachel Reeves demanding answers on her career. And there are a whole load of very important questions here. And they're simple questions that Rachel Reeves should be able to easily answer. Between what years were you employed by the Bank of England? What was your job title at the Bank of England? Between what years were you employed by HBOS? What was the reason you left HBOS? Will you now publish a full, unedited CV? So let's talk about this now with my superstar panel, Tess, Wheldon and Rebecca Jane. Tess, Wheldon, this just gets worse for Rebecca Reed, but Rachel Reeves. But what I find astonishing is that no one has asked the Prime Minister or Reeves about this. However, when a journalist yesterday did ask the government spokesperson if Rachel Reeves had broken the ministerial code, they wouldn't answer because she clearly has. And breaking the ministerial code means if you promised a government of integrity and honesty, which Reeves did multiple times and Starmer did multiple times, she has to go.
Absolutely. And it's not just that. If any of us were found to have lied on our CV in order to get a job, we would be sacked from that job. It's just reasonable. Why is it different for politicians? Why should it be any different for Rachel Reeves? The fact is that Labour think that they're superior. They think because they're the nice party, they can get away with whatever they would like to get away with. And it justifies any personal fault because they're trying to help the people by giving people lots of money and growing the size of the state because they're the state and they're here to help. Look at the last politician that lied in a major way, Boris Johnson. What happened to him? Everyone completely came down on him like a ton of bricks and he was out of office very, very quickly, despite still having great popularity within the country. I see no reason why it should be any different for Rachel Reeves.
Rebecca J?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, this woman is in one of the most important jobs in our country and we don't actually know who the heck she is or where the heck she's actually come from. And I think we kind of need to know. And if you've got nothing to hide, why are you not answering this head on? Why are you not, telling us exactly who you are? When obviously I was in law school, the first thing that we got taught was the ministerial code. And, obviously you say, Dan, about the mainstream media and about their agenda and how it's not a surprise that, they're only championing one-sided views. I agree with you. But if there's another thing that I absolutely knew, it's that Labour are liars. And literally from the get-go of when they came in office, they have been lying ever since. This is not new. This is who they are. And unfortunately, the public need to see their true colours and believe it. People voted for Labour. You voted for a mess. You got a mess. And here we are, another example of it.
I know. But the thing is, it's the hypocrisy. It is the absolute rank hypocrisy. And I cannot understand, Tess, that these so-called journalists have been in front of Rachel Reeves, have been in front of Keir Starmer, and have not asked a single question about it.
Well, I think it's very clear that there is a kind of handshake and nod agreement between them that if you don't question them on difficult issues, then you get more access, then you get more interviews and an easier time of it, and therefore you're finding that people don't actually ask them difficult questions. But it also exposes a greater problem in the British media in general, and also just British political life, which is that we bow left and we shoot right. which means that we're just going to get more and more and more liberal views. Liberal politicians are going to get away with more, and conservatives are cancelled very, very quickly.
I know. The thing is that the problem... Look, the mainstream media is dead. It is dying. It is corrupted. It is captured. The problem is we used to rely on the mainstream media to apparently keep politicians honest. We can no longer do that. We know from what's happened in the US that the mainstream media are complete stooges. They were describing Donald Trump just a few days ago as a Nazi fascist, something he clearly is not, someone who was going to destroy democracy forever. Now they're cozying up to him at Mar-a-Lago. So we know that the mainstream media cannot be trusted. The problem is that the independent media in this country doesn't get the opportunity, Rebecca Jane, very often to be in front of the Chancellor, to be in front of the Prime Minister, which is why they can get away with such egregious scandals. And I hope people just wake up to the fact that you cannot trust a media that doesn't even ask the question. Because let's be honest, it's not just about Rachel Reeves' fake CV. It's also about what Yvette Cooper and what Keir Starmer knew about Axel Rudakabana and when they were trying to tell the British public that they were all far-right extremists who believed in snake oil populism if they dared question if this guy was an Islamist extremist. Well, now, according to the latest police charges, he is an Islamist extremist. According to revelations from Tommy Robinson in prison, he is attending the mosque at Belmarsh. Again, all I ask of the mainstream media, Rebecca, is to ask the question. The fact they haven't bothered to do that shows, I believe, that they are now a crooked part of the system rather than an external force trying to keep the system honest.
Yeah, it's really depressing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is why I had to stop reading the news. This is why I had to stop being so involved with it. Because actually, every time I see stuff or don't see stuff, I get even more depressed by it and feel more hopeless. And actually, that's not the answer for any of this. And it's an absolute desperate crying shame that all we want from our politicians is honesty and authenticity. And all we want from our media is honesty and authenticity. And it's the two things that nobody's actually getting. What is the solution? What is the answer? Well, people are waking up and people do realise that actually, so many people are now turning off the news. That's not a coincidence. That is because people are learning. These people are feeding me what they want me to know. So people are getting there. But what do we do about it in the future? I'm not entirely sure. It will take a serious revolt. And unfortunately, and I said this at the last election, I think that the public have to have Labour in power to learn how bad our situations have become. And I'm hoping when it comes around for another election, people are going to waken up a lot more and they're actually going to take control back of this country. I'm going to live in some kind of hope because if
I hope you're right. I hope you're right. The problem that I have, Rebecca, is that we can't afford to wait 5 years, although I would be amazed if this government is able to go that distance. I think one of the solutions, though, is genuine people power. I mean, we've seen this with Elon Musk, who says, come and post your news on my platform. I'm going to allow you that free speech. Sometimes I'll even give you legal support. Sadly, that doesn't extend to other social media networks. So I want to give you an example of this, which comes from a man called Kev Gillett, who claims to be a former colleague of Rachel Reeves. Now, Rachel Reeves hasn't denied his claims. I'm going to put them to you. But as a footnote, by the way, I should say that the suggestion is that Kev Gillett has been booted off LinkedIn as a result of this post, which again shows you that very often you cannot trust big tech platforms to be on the side of the truth. But Kev Gillett wrote, back in 2009, Rachel Reeves worked 3 levels below me, just facts. She was a complaints support manager at LBG HBOS, not an economist. Fact check. Nearly got sacked due to an expenses scandal where the 3 senior managers were all signing off each other's expenses. Narrow escape. Then had lots of doctors and dentist visits. So she was followed. Turns out she was doing Labour Council business. When shown the facts, she resigned. Now she is robbing people who've worked hard. Now she is ruining every agricultural family. Evil, evil socialists. Socialism is great until you've spent your money. But first, don't eat breakfast, okay? Until you learn about caloric bypass. Your breakfast is setting you up for the entire day to either gain weight or lose it. The term breakfast literally means to break your fast that you started the night before. About 4 hours after you eat dinner, your body switches from the nutrients we get from food to the stored glycogen we have in our body. Once glycogen stores are depleted, typically after 8 to 12 hours of fasting, the body shifts to burning fat for energy. Fatty acids are released from fat stores where they are converted into ketone bodies through a process called ketogenesis. Then, when you eat breakfast in the morning, the body starts the cycle again. This is where the caloric bypass comes into play. Dr. Gundry, a heart surgeon in California, learned that if you break your nightly fast with something called MCTs, or medium chain triglycerides, you can actually keep burning fat throughout the day and use it for energy. But there are specific types of food that contain these MCTs. Using this breakfast breakthrough, he was able to lose 70 pounds just through diet. And check this out, he did it in his 60s. You can find out all about it and his exact method by going to thehealthyfat.com/outspoken. Let me repeat that, www.thehealthyfat.com/outspoken. Or you can click on the link in the description box below, or in the QR code, actually. Use the QR code, point your phone to the screen, that sort of thing. It's important to remember that everyone's body processes fat differently, and it all depends on your unique metabolic type, which is why in the video he released for my special viewers, he talks all about it. It really is quite fascinating and might change the way you think about health. Go to thehealthyfat.com/outspoken or click on the link in the description box below. And isn't it fascinating, Tess Wheldon, that post has apparently been censored by LinkedIn, although we've had no denial from Reeves. And the thing is, Reeves made such a big deal when she became Chancellor about the fact that she was the first female Chancellor. We were all meant to celebrate that finally Labour had smashed one of these glass ceilings, even though this is the party that has never had a female leader. But if she's making so much of her personal achievements, isn't it very important that we know if she really was this dodgy worker at HBOS who got sacked for doing political business when she was meant to be working?
Absolutely. I think that it's very important that we actually know where politicians come from and their background, because we have a representative democracy, which means that we have to choose a representative whom we can decide on their experience, that we can trust, that we agree with their views, and we let them go and represent us in Westminster. I think people forget that an awful lot of the time. But I also think that they really benefit from having a mainstream media they're not critical. They don't go and investigate anymore. Investigative journalism seems to be done only on shows like yours. Rather, they are a mouthpiece. They take what is said by Labour spokespeople and they just put it out. For example, Labour's now been saying that actually Rachel Reeves has been straight with the people, not about her CV. They say, oh, she's been straight with the people. That's the headline that people use, about the state of the economy and what is needed to fix it. And I've never heard, and I'm terribly sorry for my language, but I've never heard a larger bit of bullcrap in my life. Because
Yes.
after the budget, the OBR downgraded the growth forecast for the next quarter from 0.5% to 0.1%, and actually gilt yields in the week after the budget rose really sharply because financial markets looked at the level of borrowing and said, well, that's current spending rather than investment, and therefore the UK is going to be in a worse place economically after Labour. And I absolutely agree. Britain needed to choose a Labour government. They need to know that actually Labour is not some panacea. And we do this every kind of 20 years now. We have a Labour government. They screw everything up even worse than the little mistakes made by the Conservatives. The Conservatives pulled themselves back together again, and then we have a Conservative government sorting out Labour's mess. It's a real shame that no one seems to learn from history.
Yeah, I know. I honestly think that point is so critical, Tess, because if we cannot trust someone to be honest about their CV, How on earth can we trust them to be honest about the economy? And we know she hasn't been honest about the economy. She hasn't been honest about the black hole. It's a bit like the BBC and that disinformation reporter, Mariana Spring, who also faked her own CV, and now she fakes lots of news reporting. It's like the people who claim to be holier than thou usually have the dodgiest backgrounds and are the ones who we cannot trust. But I can trust both of you, and what a fabulous superstar panel today. Such a pleasure for you to have made your debut with us, Tess, on such an important day for your industry. That is Tess Wheldon, the farmer who was amidst the protest today, and of course one of my all-time favourites, Rebecca Jane, the former deputy leader of UKIP, legal expert, and also a top Conservative commentator. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.